So, how does something simple, a faith based on a relationship, turn into a really complex philosophical puzzle? That's what we're digging into today. We're going to explore a huge shift in early Christian belief using the apostolic pattern as our guide. We'll look at how the way people thought about God and Jesus changed dramatically, and how one single famous creed might have been the turning point for everything.
Just look at this timeline. It tells a pretty wild story. On one end, around 60 AD, you've got the apostles. They're using simple, personal language, talking about fathers and sons and lords. Fast forward about 300 years, and suddenly the conversation is full of these dense, complex, philosophical terms. So what on earth happened in those 3 centuries? Our source argues this wasn't just language evolving. No, this was a total revolution in how people thought.
And this slide right here, this gets right to the heart of it. On the left, you see the kind of language the apostles used, straight from the Bible. One God, the Father. It's simple, it's personal. But on the right, you have the key word from the Nicene Creed, homoousios. It's a Greek philosophical term, and it means of the same substance. The argument from our source is that this one word completely changed the game, shifting the focus from a who, the Father, to a what, a substance. Which leads us to the central question we're going to be tackling, the big question from our source material. In their effort to protect the faith and define it, did the people who wrote the Nicene Creed actually go too far? Did they accidentally move away from the original blueprint that the apostles left behind? To even begin to answer that, we first need to get a handle on what our source calls the apostolic pattern. The whole idea here is that there was an original, clear framework for understanding God and Jesus. And, it's not some hidden secret. You can find it just by looking at what the apostles themselves wrote. And this verse right here is presented as pretty much the foundational blueprint. Just notice how clearly Paul draws the lines. He says there is one God, and then he specifies who that one God is, the Father. He's the ultimate source, the one from whom everything originates. Then, separately, he identifies Jesus as one Lord, the agent, the one through whom the Father gets everything done. The roles are totally distinct, but they work together perfectly. Okay, so this brings us to a key idea the source uses to explain the Father's unique role. It's a fancy word, aseity. But all it really means is self-existence, the idea that a being exists entirely in and of itself, needing nothing else. According to this apostolic pattern, only the Father has aseity. He's the uncaused cause, the ultimate wellspring of everything that exists. Everyone and everything else, the Son included, gets their existence from him. And the source points right to Jesus' own words to back this up. Look at this. Jesus says that his own divine life, his life in himself, was granted to him by the Father. I mean, think about that word, granted. A gift has to have a giver. This suggests that the Son's divinity, while totally real, is derived from the Father. Kind of like a ray of light is really and truly light, but it owes its entire existence to the Son. So, you might be thinking, okay, if the Son isn't the ultimate source, how does he have all this power and authority? And this is where the source brings in a really critical concept from Jewish law, the shaliach, or agent. Now, in this way of thinking, an agent isn't just a representative. No, they carry the full authority of the person who sent them. Legally, the agent is considered as the man himself. And Jesus seems to confirm this idea of agency himself when he says he can do nothing of his own accord. Now, in this view, that's not him admitting he's weak. It's actually a declaration of his perfect unity and alignment with the Father. He's not acting as some independent power source. He's acting as the Father's fully authorized perfect agent. All right, so now we get to the major turning point in the whole story, the Council of Nicaea, back in 325 AD. According to our source, this is the moment. This is when Greek philosophy officially got fused with how people were reading the Bible, and it led to a massive, permanent change. And right at the center of that change is that one word we saw before, homoousios. And here's the kicker. It's a word you won't find anywhere in the Bible. It was borrowed from Greek philosophy. And by inserting this idea of being of the same substance into their creed, the argument is that the Church Fathers forever changed how the Father and Son were understood. So let's break this down, because this is the crucial point.
The apostolic focus was all on who Jesus is in relation to the Father. He's the Son, he's the agent. It's about relationship and role. But the Nicene focus shifted the conversation to what Jesus is made of, his substance, his essence. It basically moved the discussion from the courtroom of agency to the laboratory of metaphysics.
And what was the result of that shift? Well, as our source sees it, a simple, powerful, relational truth, the Father acting through his Son, got turned into this incredibly complex metaphysical puzzle. A puzzle that, it's argued, the original apostles themselves probably wouldn't have even recognized. Okay, so how does this whole apostolic pattern actually work when you apply it? The source argues that if we use this lens, the Father is the source, the Son is the agent, we can reread some of the most famous verses in the Bible, and they look completely different. So let's test it out on a few of the big ones. First up, the classic from John 10:30, I and the Father are one. Now, for centuries, this has been held up as the definitive proof that they share the same substance. But what did Jesus actually mean when he said they were one?
So you've got two ways of looking at it. The Nicene reading says this means one in substance, but the apostolic reading says, hang on, let's let Jesus define his own terms. Because later, in John chapter 17, Jesus prays that all of his disciples might be one in the exact same way that he and the Father are one. He clearly wasn't asking for them all to magically merge into a single substance, right? He was praying for them to be perfectly united in purpose and in will.
Okay, next up, the very beginning of John's Gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I mean, come on, that sounds like a total slam dunk for the Nicene view, doesn't it? But the source argues there's a really subtle point in the original Greek that changes everything. So the source points out this key difference in the Greek. The text says the Word was with the God, a specific person, the Father, but that the Word itself was simply God, more like a description of its quality, its nature, that it was divine. You can think of it like this. Your spoken word is the perfect expression of you, but it isn't literally you. So in this reading, the Word is the divine expression of the one God who is its source. And for our last example, what about Thomas? After seeing the risen Jesus, he has this incredible outburst, my Lord and my God. I mean, how does the agency model possibly explain that? Well, the key, according to the source, is just reading the rest of the chapter. It's all about context, because just a few verses earlier, Jesus tells Mary that he is ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. Wait a minute, Jesus himself has a God? So when you see that, Thomas's Christ suddenly looks different. It's understood not as calling Jesus the ultimate supreme God, but as recognizing him as the visible Lord and the divine agent of the very one that Jesus himself calls my God. So, after all of that, where does this framework actually lead us? The source makes the case that the Bible itself tells us how the story ends. And in doing so, it reveals the ultimate eternal relationship between the Father and the Son, maybe suggesting a return to a simpler view. And this verse is presented as the final piece of the whole puzzle. Paul writes that at the very end of time, the Son himself will be subject to the Father. The source claims this isn't just about a temporary role he had on earth. It's an eternal reality of their relationship. And it's all designed so that the Father, the ultimate source of everything, can finally be all in all. So let's just recap what we've walked through here. The source material we've been exploring lays out this really distinct pattern. The core arguments are: the Father is the sole ultimate God. The Son is his supreme divine agent. The Son's divinity is something that was granted to him by the Father. And, maybe most critically, the Nicene Creed shifted the whole conversation away from this personal relationship and onto an abstract philosophical substance, changing what was once a simple confession: Jesus is the Son of God. And all of this leaves us with a really big, thought-provoking question to chew on. Does looking at the faith through this apostolic pattern, like our source suggests, bring us back to a simpler, more scriptural understanding? Or, in trying to peel back all those layers of tradition, does it end up losing an essential truth that was developed for a good reason over centuries? That's the question the source leaves us with.